Alien, Predator,
I'm a savage! Oh!
Predator. Two of cinema's greatest movie monsters, and the two that really shaped who I am, for better or worse. Back when I was a kid, my father would rent us movies every Friday night. Generally, most nights we would pick out the movies for ourselves, but some nights my father would just come home with movies. Oftentimes they were B-horror movies like Chud or Piranha. Horror films that for a child were scary, but there wasn't really anything in them that was too offensive. It's not like he was renting us Last House on the Left. But one magical weekend, my father rented us 5 movies. 5 movies that I don't think he realized just how much of an impact they'd have on my life. Yes, I'm talking about the Alien trilogy and Predator 1 and 2. That Friday night, we watched the Alien films, me doing my best to hide my eyes and pretend like I wasn't terrified, while my father sat there pulling my hands away from my face and making me watch the horror coming off the screen. Alien scared the shit out of me. It was like nothing I had ever seen. From the moment those letters slowly appeared on screen, I knew I was in trouble. Then came Aliens, and surprisingly I felt sort of safe during this movie. I wasn't locked in some claustrophobic spaceship with a bunch of crew members who couldn't defend themselves. This time I was surrounded by pulse rifle toting space marines, and Ripley bashing around the Queen Alien in a massive power loader.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Alien 3 then proceeded to rip my heart out when the characters I had just spent 2 hours with all died. Never has the ending to a movie made me cry as much as when Ripley sacrifices herself. Well, maybe not since Godzilla had been dropped into that volcano. The next night, it was time for Predator. At the time, I can't remember if I had ever actually seen a Schwarzenegger film, but Predator was so badass. I can't say Predator scared me as much as Alien did, but I loved the action, the one-liners, even if I didn't understand half of them, and the machismo that just oozed off the screen.
You son of a bitch.
Predator 2 was sort of more of the same, though I do remember my father covering my eyes when the Colombian drug lord and his lady were, getting busy, only to then be murdered by the Jamaican voodoo posse. Predator 2 is pretty wild. But something happened at the end of Predator 2, something that completely broke my brain as a kid, because when Danny Glover steps into that ship and sees the trophy room, I saw something I don't think I was supposed to see. The skull of the alien. How was this possible? These are 2 monsters from 2 different movies. What did this mean? And more importantly, how was Hollywood gonna fuck it up? Now, movie monster crossovers are nothing new. You've got Frankenstein meets the Wolfman from 1943, King Kong vs. Godzilla from 1962, Kramer vs. Kramer.
Stop laughing, it's not funny.
But it wasn't long until one day while out shopping with my mom, I would come across the comic book Aliens vs. Predator Duel. Seeing 2 of my favorite monsters battling it out on the front cover was one of the most amazing things I had seen in my short 9 years. Of course, I had to have it, and thus began my obsession with the Dark Horse comics. The Alien and Predator comics were just like the movies, dark, violent, and pulled absolutely no punches. Honestly, looking back, I probably shouldn't have been reading these. I mean, this guy here just straight up says the N-word. But is it really any different from the EC comics kids were reading back in the 1950s? Yeah, maybe a little different. As the years went on and I got older, then came the video games. My first Alien video game was Alien 3 for the Sega Genesis. This game was less Alien 3 and more aliens with an Alien 3 paint job. Next up was the Alien trilogy for the PlayStation. The game was basically a Doom clone. Here you're playing as Ellen Ripley blasting away at aliens and facehuggers in a first-person shooter. The graphics weren't the best, but the sound effects and the beeping motion tracker set the mood and made for one very scary experience. Everything changed, however, when in 1999 a friend of mine invited me over to play this new computer game he got, Aliens vs. Predator. Developed by Rebellion and published by Fox Interactive, Aliens vs. Predator was another first-person shooter, except this time it was 3D, let you play as a colonial space marine, but also the alien or predator. What made this game so great was that each character was basically a completely different experience. If you wanted the power fantasy of being an unstoppable monster, you play as the predator. If you wanted to throw up while running around, you play as the alien. And if you wanted one of the best horror experiences, you would play as the marine. Now of course my go-to was always the marine, because I cannot turn down the sweet sound of an M41A pulse rifle. However, the dark hallways and beeping of the motion tracker were more than enough to give me a mini heart attack. I think it was around this time where I started to read news articles online about a possible Alien vs. Predator movie. This was back in the Wild West days where you'd find these random fan sites that were pretty sketchy, but at the same time one of our only sources of info. Unbeknownst to me, however, the idea for an Aliens vs. Predator movie had actually been discussed as early as 1990. After the release of Predator 2, co-writer Jim Thomas discussed the probability of a crossover between the Alien and Predator franchises. Jim stated that while he thought it was a good idea, the likelihood of it actually happening was nearly zero. 1 year later, a young writer by the name of Peter Briggs would write his own treatment for an Aliens vs. Predator movie, titled The Hunt, Alien vs. Predator. His initial outline roughly followed the story of the popular comic book series, though according to Briggs, he gutted a lot of the stuff that wouldn't work on film, and ended up with something that he claimed was 70% his. The story would take place on the planet Ryushi from the comics, but instead of being a small desert-like ranching planet, which I guess was a little too close to Tatooine from Star Wars, Ryushi instead would be a lush jungle planet. Also, the story would remove the ritualistic rite of passage hunt and simply be a standard hunt. Like the comic the script was based on, the script was fairly basic. It featured the predator spreading eggs around Ryushi in order to fuel their hunt, and of course, as is the way with movies like this, everything gets way out of hand. Coincidentally, when Briggs's agent handed the script over to Larry Gordon, producer of Predator 1 and 2, only a few days prior, Gordon and 20th Century Fox had already had some brief talks about a potential crossover film. So for Briggs, it really was a case of right place, right time. Briggs's first draft was purchased immediately and was briefly followed with a request for a second draft. According to Briggs, after the second draft was completed, roughly 70% of his original was still intact. Some things got moved around, characters got dropped, dialogue was reworked, but for the most part, it still was the script Briggs wrote. One interesting thing to note is that according to Briggs, one of the added sequences to the second draft was the idea of a zero-gravity battle between aliens and predators, which would feature acidic blood floating in space. Cut to some 30+ years later, and Alien Romulus would feature a zero-gravity scene with, would you guess it, floating acidic blood.
It's got a wonderful defense mechanism. You don't dare kill it.
With what seemed like a sure thing, in 1992, search for a director landed on everyone's favorite big-budget and zero-substance director Roland Emmerich, a man known more for blowing up the White House in Independence Day and directing a Godzilla movie that didn't actually feature Godzilla.
What?
At this point, he had just finished work on Universal Soldier and was gearing up for work on Stargate. He and frequent collaborator Dean Devlin were apparently going to loosely base their Alien vs. Predator movie on the comic, except keeping things on a jungle planet like the original Predator. Now this might sound like the Briggs treatment, but considering how Emmerich and Devlin like to do their own thing, it's likely they tossed out his idea to work on their own. One interesting thing to note is that in Emmerich and Devlin's idea, they were going to introduce the Pred Alien, or as they called it, the Pralien, which honestly sounds like pralines and cream. The Pred Alien is a very powerful and very deadly alien that is the result of a predator being face-hugged. Emmerich's story would end with a lone human and lone predator setting aside their differences to combat an even greater enemy. Now this might all sound silly, but this is all taken directly from various comics, so it's very on brand. Sometime during the early to mid-90s, Fox even commissioned artwork from artist scientist Dave Dorman to design what this Pred alien might look like. In 1995, the Pred alien would make its debut in the comic Aliens vs. Predator Duel, sporting the same look as Dave Dorman's conceptual design, and which just happened to be the very first Alien vs. Predator comic I owned. As the years went on, infighting from various producers of both the Alien and Predator films kept the crossover from happening. Alien producer David Giler was very much against it, as he felt it would dilute the brand. However, the real reason the film languished in development hell mostly came down to who would get credit for what, and most importantly, money.
Money fight!
What likely killed the project for good, however, was the critically panned release of Alien Resurrection and Emmerich's own attempt at an American Godzilla. But out of the ashes of a once promising Alien vs. Predator came something even more exciting. After losing interest in an Alien vs. Predator crossover, Fox briefly decided to shift focus to Alien 5. Now you might be asking yourself why, since the fourth film was such a disaster. But what makes this one so special is that it was going to be written by James Cameron of Aliens fame and directed by Ridley Scott of Alien fame. Here you have the two men that defined the Alien franchise coming together to work on the fifth installment. How could Fox not want to do this? Well, I can tell you how. See, in 2003, a little monster mashup came out that had also been in development hell for over a decade.
Freddy versus Jason.
Place your bets.
Freddy vs. Jason's road to the big screen is so long and documented that it has its own book. But all that mattered is two iconic monsters were on the big screen and they raked in big bucks. The fact a movie about two slashers from long dormant franchises was able to be the biggest financial success of either series was enough to convince Fox that maybe a versus film is the way to go. Now, I'm not saying Fox scrapped Alien 5 specifically because of Freddy vs. Jason, but looking at how quickly they put Alien vs. Predator into production after the success of Freddy vs. Jason, it's hard for me to see it any other way. Also, I really want to emphasize just what we lost with the pivot from a Scott Cameron Alien 5. We really could have had something special. With that project dead in the water, the studio needed to find a young, up-and-coming director who had the vision and energy to capture something as silly as aliens fighting predators. At one point, the name Guillermo del Taco or something along those lines was tossed out there, but he just didn't have what they were looking for. It's fine though, it's not like the guy was ever gonna make it in Hollywood.
And the Oscar goes to Guillermo del Toro.
Instead of some nobody we've never heard of, Fox went with a legend, a visionary, a cinematic warlord, the man who looked at storytelling and said, nah, Paul W.S. Anderson, the man who brought us critically acclaimed movies like Mortal Kombat, Event Horizon, Soldier, and of course his magnum opus, Resident Evil. Now, Paul had actually been trying to get a script through to Fox since the early to mid-90s, but since now Fox was desperate to get this thing going, they suddenly fell in love with his treatment about pyramids, ancient man worshipping predators like gods, and a basic reworking of the original Aliens vs. Predator comic book. But after all these years in development, and a cinematic juggernaut like Paul W.S. Anderson behind the helm, what could possibly go wrong? The film opens 100 years in the past. There's a whaling station in Antarctica and a man running for his life. Now, I believe this entire sequence isn't even in the theatrical cut, as this is the unrated version, but all it really serves to do is give us a brief glimpse of the alien and predator. Speaking of unrated version, when Alien vs. Predator came out, it was given a PG-13 rating. As a huge fan of the franchise, this was very concerning, because how the hell do you make a PG-13 Alien or Predator film? Did the people in charge not see how violent those movies were? It then cuts to the title of the film, which is supposed to mimic the way the letters came on screen in the original Alien. We then get a shot of what looks to be the alien queen from Aliens, but it's just a Wayland Industries satellite dish. We then see this guy who's watching Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, which is a little on the nose, when the satellite picks up some strange heat signature in the Arctic. Sometime later, this lady Lex is scaling the side of a mountain when she decides now is the perfect time to take a phone call. Like the Avengers, Charles Bishop Wayland is putting together a team to check out this heat signature, and she, alongside a bunch of other cliché characters, are needed for their expertise. Though how she didn't hear a helicopter land is beyond me, those things aren't exactly known for being quiet. Lex and the others are brought to an icebreaker ship called the Piper Maru. Now, why does that sound so familiar? I know! The Piper Maru is the name of the French salvage vessel that first discovered the black oil on the X-Files. The ship was named after Gillian Anderson's daughter, Piper Maru Klotz, and I would love to know how Gillian felt about her daughter's name being used in a completely unrelated movie. Also, if you thought you were getting a video without me mentioning the X-Files, do you even know me? Naturally, we get to one of the biggest issues with this movie, the characters, because there are no characters. Every single person in this film is a single-note caricature. There's Lady Hero, Spud, Italian Man, Wolf Stanson, Son of Anarchy, Frank Black, most likely to be diced into delicious meat cubes, and of course, Gozer.
Choose the form of the Destructor.
Not a single person in this movie has anything beyond what their race is or what their profession is. Look, I'm not looking for super deep characters in an Alien vs. Predator movie, but give me something, anything! So Lance Henriksen plays Charles Bishop Wayland, billionaire, founder, and CEO of Wayland Industries, and basically Anderson's way of connecting this movie to the Alien franchise. AvP was designed as both a prequel and a sequel to Predator in that it comes after, and a prequel to Alien as it comes much earlier. The reason why it takes place in Antarctica is so Anderson would have an excuse for why it could still follow established canon, because even though there are technically aliens on Earth, no one has actually seen them and lived to tell the tale. It's a cheat, but it kind of works, I guess. Wayland shows the group a 3D mapping of this heat signature, and it turns out to be a pyramid of some sort. He's like, we're all going down there, and everyone is super excited. Well, except for Lex, who's all, I can't do this. I don't have enough time to prepare everyone. Luckily, Spud and Italian Man are there to talk her into staying. In the meantime, the Predators are firing massive lasers at the Earth, which no one seems to notice. Considering the size and scope, that should have lit up the entire area, like that one jerk who uses high beams when he's on your ass. The group makes their way to the old abandoned whaling station, the one we saw in the beginning of the movie, but it doesn't really look like a place that experienced a battle between aliens and predators. I mean, I'd expect damage caused by acid everywhere, no? The group discovers the massive hole caused by the laser, which none of them seem all too concerned about. Whalen's just like, well, it wasn't here yesterday, maybe we should go down and check it out. I don't care how much this guy is paying, there is not enough money in the world to get me to go down there. Not only does Wayland want to go down there, but he wants to do so with lung cancer or something. Preserving one's legacy really makes people do some crazy shit at times. They start to descend down this massive hole with a rope system, I guess the kind you'd use when rock climbing, but because something has yet to happen in the movie, something goes wrong and Wayland enjoys what looks to be the best slide ever made.
Super fun happy slide!
Meanwhile, the Predators arrive and these guys miss the massive spaceship flying over their head? Well, they did miss the massive laser too. Wayland and the others discover the pyramid temple thingy, which seems to be covered in artwork from the comics. Speaking of the comics, but when this guy activates a hidden switch in the pyramid, it brings a chained up queen alien to the surface and forces her to start producing eggs. This is taken directly from the original comic and even has the conveyor belt that takes the eggs away. Meanwhile, the dig team, who are also part-time security I guess, are confronted by the Predators. I'm not sure why they would trust a gun to this guy though. Nothing has even happened and he's already freaking out. This is where that PG-13 rating starts to rear its ugly head, because the violence is so watered down. Now remember, this is the unrated version, but the only real difference between this and the theatrical is the fact they added some cheap-looking CGI blood. The reveal of the combi stick, I'll admit, is pretty cool though. However, the reveal of the Predators themselves, not so much. I don't know what happened in the design phase, but they look less like predators and more like NFL linebackers. They're so big and bulky. Now apparently Paul Anderson felt that since the predators were going to be in a cold climate, they should have more armor covering them up, which is fine. But why are the predators themselves massive bodybuilders? I much prefer the more slender and agile look of the originals. They were still big, but they were also kind of lanky and looked like they could run around and leap high distances. These predators look like they'd struggle to run short distances or even wipe their own ass. Back with the group who discovers a sacrificial chamber, which I'm pretty sure is supposed to look like the sleep pods on the Nostromo. It wouldn't be an Alien movie without a cheap facehugger jump scare now, would it? Oh look, it's the poster for Alien 3. This movie is absolutely filled with references and callbacks, but references and callbacks aren't necessarily what make a good movie. Lex and Italian Man discover a Fortnite treasure chest, and inside are the Predator's plasma casters. You know, those cool shoulder-mounted cannons that Paul Anderson says look like hair dryers? The team decides to take the weapons, and the Predators are like, "Aw shit, they found our stash. Don't run too hard, guys, you're gonna trigger your asthma." Does anyone remember the movie Cube? Because the film suddenly turns into Cube with all the shifting rooms. Meanwhile, the group in the sacrificial chamber is confronted with alien eggs. Good luck trying to shoot the facehuggers, however, because these are slow-motion bullet-time Matrix facehuggers. It's been, what, 5 years since The Matrix came out, and we're still feeling its effects?
7 seasons on the ice and I've never seen a gun save someone's life.
I don't plan on using it.
Well, at least she stuck to not using her gun when she had plenty of time to do so. Also, does anyone else find the facehuggers to be much scarier than the aliens themselves? Back with the living group, and it seems Wayland's men are packing. Guns, that is. I wonder if these rifles were chosen because they look vaguely similar to the pulse rifle. Alright, so it's been about 1 minute and 30 seconds from the time the group in the sacrificial chamber is facehugged to the time where we see an alien burst out of Gozer. Can I ask why the gestation period is so accelerated? In the original Alien, it seemed to take days. In Aliens, the Marines were still finding living impregnated colonists. In Alien 3, Ripley herself had an alien in her chest for the entire movie. But here it's less than 2 minutes? They could have written the story in a way where the group gets facehugged earlier in the movie and have to spend a few days at base camp while the others figure out what to do. But whatever, we've got to rush to the fighting, I guess. The Predators find their empty loot box and are pissed. So pissed that they make sounds like tigers? The Predators still have their classic clicking noises, but for some reason they also just make tiger sounds. Like whoever did the sound design didn't even bother to change it. They just paid for some stock tiger roars and figured, that's good enough. Wow, this scene is so dark, you'd think I was watching the sequel. The Predators notice, hey, aren't those weapons ours? Guess the humans gotta die now. The pyramid suddenly changes again, which is a convenient way of separating and isolating parts of the group. I'm sure this nameless guy who just found alien slime will be fine though. Ah, the classic PG-13 cutaway. Can't have any violence in your Alien vs. Predator movie. Son of Anarchy and Spud start talking about their kids, so you know they're dead soon. Why would someone intentionally touch something this slimy? Mr. Anarchy falls through a trap door and has an alien just staring at him. Why he doesn't immediately start shooting though, I'll never understand.
You ugly son of a bitch!
So does this count as the "you're one ugly motherfucker" from Predator? Because if so, they do this twice in the movie. So Spud and his pal are gone. The Predators, who are still unhappy about their stolen weapons, decide to take it out on this guy, turning him into delicious meat cubes. I don't know what Paul Anderson has against this actor, but this is the second time this guy has been cubed in his movies. Luckily, an alien arrives just in time, so we can get this epic trailer shot. And also, this is the first time a Predator is embarrassed by a single alien in this movie. That's one thing that's always annoyed me. Having read the comics, I know the Predators. even the young predators can whoop aliens' ass. The only time they ever really lose is when they're outnumbered, but generally not in a one-on-one. A single alien makes pretty easy work of 2 of the 3 predators. Now, Paul Anderson admitted to being a bigger fan of the Alien franchise, and I think his bias shows a bit in this film. Funnily enough, I am also a bigger Alien fan, but I'm also a fan of the comics, and this is not how it should play out. Another predator jumps in to avenge his buddy, but you can tell how quickly it's cut and how jarring the movement of the camera is that they're doing all they can to hide the fact that it's just 2 men in rubber suits. Hey, doesn't Batman use this same maneuver on Superman when they fought? Also, I kind of hate how the Predator's blades melt from the alien blood. The Predator tries to cube the alien, though the acid blood cuts through the net, and then the alien, now called Grid, because we have to sell toys for this movie, easily kills off the Predator. So if you're keeping track at home, that's 2-0 in favor of the aliens. I guess we should be thankful this movie doesn't have the original 5 Predators that Paul Anderson wanted, because we could be looking at 4-0 right about now. The final Predator finds the remaining survivors and is like, can I please have my plasma caster back before it becomes 3-0? Wayland becomes offended because the Predator won't kill a sick, dying old man, so he sets the Predator on fire, which I guess is a good enough reason to kill him. Okay, now see, this is how the movie was supposed to go. None of this single alien taking out everyone nonsense. The Predator marks his helmet and his face, which is classic warrior marking straight out of the comics, though he really needs to check his surroundings before taking off his mask. Italian Man then becomes Exposition Man when he explains everything that's going on, the rite of passage, the hunt, and the best part, that ancient civilizations used to worship the Predators as gods. Basically, the ancient alien theory. You know, you could probably throw this movie on the History Channel and fool a lot of old boomers. Somehow Spud and his bud were cocooned to the wall, despite looking very much like they were killed. I mean, it probably would have been better if they had been. Meanwhile, Lex is like, hey, maybe we should give the big guy back his gun? Maybe he won't kill us? Well, he can't kill you right now because it looks like he just woke up from a weekend bender. Oh guys, I just had this crazy dream that an alien killed you. Guys, Lex and Exposition Guy have to make a crazy jump to get away from an alien, but I guess these people don't know that aliens are very good at jumping. Great, now who's going to explain the story to us? Lex then gets confronted by the Predator who's like, where's my gun? She hands over the gun just in time for the Predator to get attacked by an alien. The alien lunges for Lex, but she manages to defend herself with the combi stick, and I think the Predator is pretty impressed. More aliens show up, but the Predator makes short work of them with the plasma caster. Grid, the Randall Weems of the aliens, watches his family get massacred and says, that's it, I'm telling Mom. Lex then says something about saving Martha? I'm not really sure what she means with that one.
Why did you say that name?
But the Predator then fashions her armor and a spear out of the alien's body, making them both super best friends.
Did we just become best friends? Yup!
Meanwhile, Grid and the other aliens must have watched Alien Resurrection because they attacked the Queen using her own blood to free her of the shackles. Lex finds Exposition Man who's stuck to the wall, so she does the right thing and shoots him. Though you'd probably want to shoot him in the chest, no? I mean, the chest burster still pops out. Also, I like how the Predator just snaps its neck. Though, can you just snap the neck of a chest burster? I mean, at that stage, they're pretty much all neck. The Predator notices that there sure are a lot of eggs in here, though I'm not sure now is the right time for charades, Mr. Predator.
It's a bomb.
Wow, how'd she pick up on that? Lex and the Predator haul ass because, you know, kaboom. But what's this strange shadow running towards the surface? It couldn't possibly be the Queen because that wouldn't make any sense.
You are one ugly mother.
Whoa, this is a PG-13 movie, young lady. Watch your language. The Predator's plasma caster gets conveniently knocked off, you know, to make the upcoming battle with the Queen a lot more tense. The bomb goes off, though their sled seems to travel at ludicrous speed. Oh god, I think they've gone plaid. Okay, so she's definitely dead here, right? They both somehow survived the explosion, though they completely destroyed a historical whaling station. The Predator then makes the terrible decision of taking his mask off and showing us just how bad the Predator makeup looks when you don't have Sam Winston's team working on it. I mean, it looks like a happy puppy dog. Its mouth never fully closes. I mean, compare this to the original Predator. See how when it closes its mouth, these flaps close too? Not with this new Predator. His mouth is just always open. The Predator makes a mark on Lex to show she's one of them now, but the funniest part is when the Queen alien shows up, the Predator has this holy shit look on his face. Seeing a Predator shocked was definitely not on my bingo card. The Predator gets a few good shots in before Lex has to save his ass. The movie then becomes Jurassic Park as we get what amounts to a T-Rex chase scene. This is how the Predator should have been acting this entire movie. Lex and the Predator hook the Queen's chain to a water tank or something, and before she can be sent to her watery grave, she gives the Predator one final stab for good measure. The ending with the Queen being dragged down into the water really is just the ending to Alien and Aliens all over again, just in water instead of space. They should have had the Predator cut her damn head off. I mean, if Machiko Noguchi can do it in the comics, why can't the Predator do it here? Unfortunately, the Predator dies, but like in every Predator movie, his friends are there to pick up the body. Unlike the comic though, the Predators just leave Lex to die alone in the Arctic, whereas in the comic, they accepted Machiko as one of their own. Lex's character was clearly based on the comic character Machiko Noguchi, but I don't know why they didn't just use her. It feels like a committee sat down and said, okay, we need a Ripley type character, but legally distinct. Personally, just use Machiko and cast someone like Lucy Liu in the role. Changing the character just feels like Anderson wanted to put his own stamp on it, rather than use something someone else already created. But Lex is fine, and I don't blame her for not really having a character. That's sort of on Anderson's shoulders, though it is funny that she's left to just freeze to death. Apparently there was going to be a cameo at the end of the movie featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dutch. He had told Anderson that he wanted to be in it, but only if he didn't win the race for governor. Unfortunately, he did become governor, and the cameo never happened. I would have lost my mind if Arnold suddenly appeared on screen. The movie then ends with some sequel bait and the reveal that our Predator friend had been impregnated, which was pretty obvious. But wait, I thought it only took less than 2 minutes for the alien to fully gestate. Why did it take so long here? I'm sure that question and others will be fully answered in the sequel. And I'm sure that movie will be even better and more brightly lit than this one. Alien vs. Predator isn't the worst movie in the world, but it's a massive disappointment. And that's the thing. This should have been the movie that 9-year-old me would have lost his mind over. Instead, it's the one I barely ever watch. As a major fan of both series, I had very high expectations. But knowing that Paul W.S. Anderson was involved and seeing what he did to Resident Evil, my hopes were pretty low. Freddy vs. Jason came out a year earlier, and as silly as that movie was, it at least tried to give fans what they wanted. It was dumb, gory, had over-the-top set pieces, pointless nudity, Freddy and Jason fighting, basically all the hallmarks that both franchises were known for. Even though I do think Anderson was earnest in his attempt, the movie just failed at every aspect of both franchises. Now, the set designs and a lot of the special effects are fantastic. I love the look of the pyramid itself. It's pretty obvious that a ton of artistry went into making it feel like a real functioning temple. The aliens for the most part look fantastic, even if I'm not the biggest fan of the dumbed down insect look that James Cameron pioneered. I always preferred the more biomechanical Lovecraftian look of the original. The Predators, for what they are, look alright, though there are many times when they just look like bulky guys in suits. Again, I wish they had gone for the more sleek look. You could still give them the body armor, they just didn't need to be so overly big. The Queen Alien also looks so damn good when she's revealed. They did a great job with the animatronics and puppetry, though when she becomes full CGI, she moves way too smooth and loses a bit of that authenticity. While I don't really like this movie, I do think Paul W.S. Anderson was sincere. If you listen to what he says behind the scenes, it's obvious he's a fan, and I do think some of his ideas are really solid. It's just that something got lost in translation along the way. Maybe it was the budget, maybe Anderson bit off more than he could chew, I'm not sure what it is, but it's pretty clear why he got the job when he did, because he is quite the pitch man. Honestly, this isn't a movie I ever go back to, even though I love the cheesiest of cheesy monster movies and will even defend a certain big budget B movie that is also bad. If I want a true Alien vs Predator experience, I'll either read the Dark Horse comics, not the Marvel ones because those are trash, or play the old video games. But what do you think about Alien vs Predator? I know this one has some very loyal fans, so do you love it? Hate it? Let me know because I am very curious. Anyways, that's all for today. I hope you're doing well and stay spooky.
These steel-jawed beasts have a hunger for destruction. Can they be stopped by the ultimate galactic hunter?
Predator!
The battle is on. Aliens versus Predator, the hunter against the beast. An alien killer crab attacks, but the Predator crack tusk fires shoulder-mount missiles, and Predator scavenge attacks with a double-barreled bola, each sold separately. Will the Predator win the battle against the evil aliens? Aliens versus Predator! Now get a special 2-pack with an exclusive Dark Horse comic.